We are live. Yes, we are. For the month of May, welcome everybody to Raising Multilinguals Live. It is a hot day. Oh my goodness, it is a hot day here. But it's good because just last week I was in the single digits out here around Montreal area. It's spring to transitioning to summer very soon. So how is it over in Europe, Lute?
It's fine. It's a bit rainy today, but it's good. Hello, everyone. I'm Mutu Limacheribot from Mutu's International Lounge. Welcome, everybody, from wherever you are connecting today.
Yes. Let me bring it back to North America and tell you about somebody who is actually from Europe, but he's living in New York, I believe, right now. Dr. Fabrice Jaumont. Thank you very much, Fabrice, for joining our call today.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Bonjour, it's great to be with you.
All right. Well, Fabrice is a world traveler just coming back from a big trip. I'm sure we'll be talking about it a little bit later. But Fabrice is, for me, he's the most famous for the Bilingual Revolution, this book that he wrote that I read quite a few years ago, and I actually had you on an interview when I was organizing Langfest here in Montreal, this event that gathered lots of polyglots around the world. So in those days already, I was in contact with Fabrice, and your work continues to impress me. And today we'd definitely like to dig in and talk about the so-called Bilingual Revolution. But let's start from the beginning. We'd really like to know about you and your background, how you got involved with the world of languages and then eventually into education.
Thank you both. Before I begin, I want to congratulate you both for this wonderful show that you've been hosting. It's incredible. It's hard work. I appreciate the time and the effort. So before anything, kudos to you.
My goodness. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
And I've been around the block for quite a long time. I started off as a school principal in Boston, running an international school, and then I moved to New York and found out that there was not enough bilingual programs around for families and parents. So I got interested in more than I could envision, actually. And then and I'm still in this. 20 years later, I'm still doing a lot of advocacy, a lot of meetings with parents, trying to convince schools and so forth. So that's where I got the virus of multilingualism and bilingual education.
The language virus. Wow.
Language virus.
Your first language is French, right? I presume you grew up in France, speaking French as a first language. Eventually, caught on with English with living in the U.S. Any other languages?
Yeah, yes, I come from the north of France. I grew up in Lille, and then traveled a little bit around, and I loved learning English. Actually, that was my favorite subject at school, and I owe it to the teacher that I had in the sixth grade, Mr. Bertrand, who took me to the UK on class trips, and gave me a passion for learning languages. And then I tried to pick up Spanish and German along the way at school, and I'm still hoping one day I'll be able to deliver a speech in Spanish and in German, but I have work to do.
Well, so really now we need to dive into the bilingual education. The trigger, the first trigger. You said you had a teacher who initiated you to English, but that's before coming to the U.S. But to really get into this world, to initiate these activities that you've undertaken in the past many years, more than one decade. What is there a real trigger that got you into this world?
Yeah, I was sent to the U.S. Back then. This was serving France, and instead of doing the military service, I got a chance to do a civil service at the French consulate in Boston. And my role was to be the education liaison, trying to promote the French language in the United States. And I visited my first French immersion programs in public schools outside of Boston, in Milton and Holliston. And then that's what got me interested in immersion or bilingual education, but through dual language immersion. And then seeing the kids in those two cities outside of Boston, perfectly fluent in English and French, despite the fact that they were not francophones. They had no French heritage or anything like that. They were just immersed in French every day, since kindergarten all the way to high school. And that for me was a revelation. I thought to myself, well, this should be everywhere. This should be offered in every school in the world, basically. This was a public school. This was free education.
Public school in French?
In French and other languages, but the kids were fully immersed.
Wow.
Half the time in French, half the time in English, and completely fluent. They were talking to me in French, very happy to show their skills. So this was the trigger, the starting point for me, because I realized the richness, the advantages that this represented for being able to be so perfectly fluent in two languages at such a young age, and having access to that kind of education for free. So
yeah, well, for free. That's what caught my attention right now as you were mentioning. But you're mentioning advantages of bilingualism. Then these kids, fortunate for them. Some don't know how fortunate they are. Some kids, they kind of are ashamed of their heritage language. But you see this as an advantage, as something that could help them. Any specific examples of how good this is?
Well, for these kids, it was a way out. It was an opening to new opportunities, trying to even get access to better schools and later on college. So this was built as an opportunity, built as really a way out of maybe a world that was harder for them. I think that's the main idea was the equitable access to quality education that takes you into the world, opens new doors and new opportunities to get a job or to get good schools. And I thought, well, that's already one thing. And then I realized later on that there were plenty of other advantages other than just the mastery of a language. Being able to not only navigate between two languages or more, but also being able to navigate between two cultures or more. So I always use the expression that dual language education is building bridges, and you really are building bridges between two languages, two cultures, two worlds. So these kids were little ambassadors, basically. They were able to understand the world with two perspectives, and maybe more, because some of them spoke a third language at home. And I really appreciate that part, particularly nowadays. In a world we live in, it triggers. I think it's this mutual understanding, the fact that that we know more about the other, we understand where you're coming from, your perspective, being tolerant about this diversity of thoughts, and I really think that should be generalized.
A norm, absolutely. I was just gonna say, it sounds so, obvious, but but the reality is it's not, and it's getting better. I would say, I would venture to say it is getting better, but there's still lots of work to do to make this really a reality, as a normality.
Yes.
You had something to say?
Yes. Yes, what you're describing are, in fact, yes, the immersion schools, right? Maybe we can quickly say what it meant with this, because there are so many different kind of bilingual immersion schools, etc. And not only depending on where you are in this world, which country you are, which language you use to define them, but they differ considerably sometimes. So sometimes a bilingual school is just because they offer classes in one language, or maybe two other languages, and mainly maybe in primary school and maybe not anymore in the secondary school, or vice versa. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the advantage of these kind of immersion schools, like
it's a good point. It's a good point. I was the principal of a private bilingual school in Boston, and over there, we were trying to create a parity between English and French 50% of the time. But the public schools that I'm referring to, they were using a full immersion approach. And you enter that school in pre-kindergarten or kindergarten. So the kids are about 4 or 5. And immediately they spend 90% of the time in the target language, in that case, French. And then gradually, over the years, English is added. And then they get to a point where in the 6th grade, it's a 50-50 model whereby English and French, all the subjects are taught in those two languages. And then later on, when I moved to New York, I got really interested in what is called here dual language programs. And this comes in various ways, but there's a one-way immersion where the children don't speak the target language, and they're going to be immersed in that target language. And then you have the two-way immersions, whereby in the same classrooms, you have, let's say for French, you have half the class is French speaking at home, and then the other half is English speaking at home. And they spend the time 50% in English, 50% in French. So they're learning from each other. They're learning from the teacher. Sometimes it's a self-contained classroom where the teacher will teach both languages. The morning is in French, the English is not in the afternoon. And sometimes it's a side-by-side model whereby the kids will switch teachers. Mondays is French and Tuesdays is English. But that's a very popular model now in the US. It's been well researched, well proven that it is very efficient to acquire a second language, but also to sustain your heritage language. And that works for many kids, that works for many families. And if you get, if you sustain it over 6 years or 8 years, some of these programs go all the way to middle schools, even high school, although not enough, in my opinion. But if you sustain that over a few years, then you reach a really good level of bilingualism, biliteracy, and biculturalism or multiculturalism for some of the children. So these are the models that I know best.
Yes, there is also the one, and it's maybe very similar to what you're saying, is the CLIL, right? The content and language integrated learning that also can start from very, very early on, and where you learn certain subjects in the other language. But you're talking about French and English, and I must ask this because there are other languages, right?
Of
so
course.
These schools are mainly targeting the families who have maybe French at home, being in the US, and they want to maintain French. What about the other languages?
So I got in this topic through the French language because of my my professional activities. But then after a while, I got to talk to families from various communities, and when I moved to New York, we were successful with a number of parents to open new programs. We started with French, but then we created programs in German, in Italian, in Arabic, in Japanese, just following a recipe of parent involvement and how to convince a school. And I can talk a little bit about that. This is what the book I wrote is about: is how do you create those programs and how you get a community engaged in this movement.
Yes.
But in the US, the most popular dual language programs are in Spanish. By far, it's over 2,000 programs in the US in Spanish, and then it's followed by Chinese, Mandarin Chinese, and then you have other languages behind, French and Polish and Russian and also in German. There are a few. So there's in New York alone, there's 15 different languages taught in dual language education settings. In Hebrew, in Urdu, in Bengali, even in Bulgarian. So it's just mind-boggling. If you have the population, you can do these programs.
Yes.
Well, we definitely want to go into your work and your book, but before that, let me just put up a little comment from Philippe Schau. Says, Guten Abend, Frau Limacher-Ribot und Herr Jung. Okay. Guten Abend. C'est un plaisir de vous voir, Monsieur Jaumont, Dr. Jaumont. Wow. And he adds, in the American Midwest, there are some bilingual programs that have German as a second language. Each community has their own focus. And
understandably so. Yeah, thank you.
The German population in the US, it's in the Midwest.
Correct.
Yeah, Minnesota, that area.
Yes. It's actually
Canada too. It's right around that area.
Millions of Americans have German heritage, and although the language has somewhat disappeared for many of them, it's still very, very strong. And in New York, we worked with the German community to create the first German-English dual language program in a public school, and this was in Brooklyn. And it was interesting to see the German families get involved and get together, trying to support an initiative like that, and they succeeded. It's
amazing.
Fantastic. Well, then let's dive in. Your book is called Bilingual Revolution, and all your advocacy, all your work is surrounding this term, bilingual revolution. You mentioned it a little bit earlier. What does this really symbolize for you? And then we'll move right into the bilingual education system currently.
Yeah. Well, first of all, as a Frenchman, revolution is dear to our psyche. We have to be revolutionary in everything we do, particularly when you're born French. And so I thought about this quite carefully, and then what is it that I want to revolutionize? And then I looked at monolingual schools and all bilingual schools that were very expensive. And there were two things here that I wanted to maybe change. First, monolingualism, as a good friend of mine said, Greg Roberts, he says that monolingualism is the illiteracy of the 21st century. And I tend to agree with him. I say maybe it's time to change monolingualism and make this disappear, make this something of the past. And so I thought, well, bilingual revolution means everything but monolingual or monolingualism or monolingual education, because I think school systems are still very monolingual in the way they approach education, and particularly with children and students that come from all over the world and that speak different languages. Why is it that our school systems don't take this into account, or don't really facilitate the expansion of the development of the heritage language, for instance? So that's one aspect why bilingual revolution. And then again, I came from a private school background, and people were paying top dollars to get access to bilingual education. Good education, absolutely fantastic programs, but why pay $40,000, $50,000 for bilingual education when you can do this in a public school settings? And I thought, well, here's a revolution. You want to make this free, accessible, equitable. The only way to do this is through public school education and public school systems, and that's where I got really interested and engaged.
So you would say the current status is essentially monolingualism trumps all.
Essentially monolingual, and unfortunately, it takes no longer than one generation to lose a language, and the U.S. is well known for that.
Yes.
It's almost a cemetery of languages. A lot of people choose to not speak the language they speak at home to their children, and for many reasons. And we can talk about those personal decisions. So why not transmit your language to your child? Many people here are afraid of repercussions, of discrimination. They don't want their kids to suffer what they suffered when they immigrated to the U.S. They don't want their kids to speak with an accent. You hear that a lot, and these are, reasons being used for not giving your language to your children, and that has to change. The discriminations and the injustice, particularly when you're an immigrant, your language is not taboo. You should be encouraged to speak it everywhere. Unfortunately, you still hear very sad stories of people being insulted on the street because they speak Spanish or Arabic, and that happens every day in this country, but also in other countries. It's something for sure we need to fight against.
Yes.
Well, definitely. If it is more common, if you see many people embracing speaking, the bilingualism, it's just a normal thing to go to a school in English and French, or in English and Arabic, or even something else, Spanish and Arabic. I don't know. Make that into a very common choice that people could have. Make it into just a matter of fact way of life. It's a very nice dream to have for now, but we could strive towards that, definitely.
Yes, and I think especially also as you are targeting mainly then also the local and not the private schools, that it becomes like a right for every citizen to have multiple languages from very early on. So it is also speaking to the local community, right? That they have the choice. You can choose, you can go to this school or that school, and then dive into that given language from early on. That gives you a head start for life, so to say. So it's not only convincing those who have these languages at home to send children to that school and to give them also the education in their home languages, but also for those who don't have any other language at home, that they have the chance to actually get immersed into another language, although they are in their country of origin. Or
I remember a mom told me why she wanted her kids to be immersed in another language, and she said something that I remember. She talking about our daughter, she said she would live a richer life. She would have a richer life. And I thought to myself, well, yes, exactly. Having a second language, a second perspective brings you so much more, and it enriches you. We hear a lot about enrichment programs in the U.S., but this is clearly one way of getting richer in a spiritual, intellectual way.
Yes.
But I understand that it can be a struggle, and you're right to mention that it should be a right. And here, that's how it is understood in the U.S. It is a right. Parents have a right to demand bilingual education in their language. There's actually laws protecting, multilingual families, and I use it a lot in the campaignings that we organize, and when we talk to parents, we tell them, look at the laws around in your state, and sometimes you'll find a mandate that says, if you have, 15 families, 15 children are entering, let's say, a kindergarten, and living in the same town or the same school district, then by law, a school is supposed or mandated rather to open a dual language program. So these are fundamental things to understand if your parents trying to claim those rights, because the law will protect you and then will help you enforce this right. And that's how we created many programs, just by gathering enough parents. We posted flyers, posters in cafes, on playgrounds, even on the radio, and then get everyone organized. You start with a group of parents, dedicated, a core group of parents, and all of a sudden, within a couple of weeks, you have 100 families following your initiative, and that's how a lot of these initiatives are started, and then from that larger group that you've formed, you try to identify where people live, ask for their zip code, ask for the age of the children, and then try to locate a school that will serve everybody, and then the next step is to approach the school principal or the school board, and try to show the data that you have collected. Here we have 100 parents asking for a program in Italian or asking for a program in Urdu, and what will you do about it? Will you support us? Will you listen to our call, or will you just shut the door? Now that's where there could be a conflict. Obviously, it happened before, and there are several examples in the book that I talk about. Some of the parents actually had to really fight and go to court to open programs. But it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be conflictual. It can be a constructive dialogue between parents and schools. It could be done together intelligently, and then also and it's beneficial for both. It's beneficial for the communities. It's beneficial for the school. A lot of the schools have been reinvigorated, strengthened by the fact that they had created dual language programs and welcomed new families on board, and it brought new blood and new energy and fundraising capacities and so on and so forth. So it's really something beneficial for parents, of course, but also for school and a community at large, because it has a ripple effect. The minute you have such an interesting dynamic within your school or your school community, then you'll see, a place will open to sell croissant and pain au chocolat next door, and I've seen so many of those places open where French dual language programs open, and then all of a sudden you have a cafe, you have a restaurant, you have a store catering, selling books. So you create a dynamic around this, which is really good for a small town or even a larger city. And in New York, you would not believe the number of people, a number of real estate agents following me on LinkedIn, just because every time we open a new program, people start moving closer to the school to get access to the school, get a chance.
I was just gonna say,
so it has consequences, right? Because of a lot of people moving in, properties are going up, and gentrification is.
That is super interesting.
Yeah,
it's absolutely
but people
fascinating.
follow that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would like to emphasize also that in your book you have in the appendix you have the roadmap for parents, right? Roadmap for those parents who are interested in creating the dual language program in their community at the public school.
Yeah, this was a roadmap written by parents for parents. So a lot of lessons learned. Because we started this and we learned the hard way. Basically, there was no roadmap. We had to figure it out. Now we did had examples from the past, particularly the Puerto Rican families, the Cuban families back in the 70s and the 80s. And then I mean, I'm not going to go through the whole history of bilingual education, but they were the pioneers. They went to court, they fought for their rights and so forth. But we came later and we it's the new the 2000s and 2010s. These were different types, different eras, and then also it was cool to speak your language. You were no longer afraid, and you hear that less and less now. People are no longer afraid to speak their language. So that's where we came in with and also the fact that dual language education became very popular, well researched, and booming. So that's what triggered this new wave of dual language programming in the US, and I know it's been spreading in other countries as well.
Yeah,
I'd like to know, your book was written quite a few years ago, and as you mentioned, lots of these grassroots efforts were very difficult. Has the advancing globalization and the internet, has this facilitated your movement? Has this increased awareness significantly? Or on the other hand, has it added layers of complexity or obstacles that you hadn't thought of? From both sides of the coin. I don't know if you can sort of comment.
Sure. Well, globalization triggers migration all over the world. It's a phenomenon we have to live with. And a lot of countries now have to revisit how they serve these newcomers. And even in countries, Tetsu, even in Japan, I was surprised to hear, which is still a country, very monolingual country, but yet
indeed.
A lot of newcomers are coming in. And when I presented my book in Japanese, they were interested because of they didn't know quite what they should do with those newcomers. And it's the same with other countries. That's how should we serve people that are coming to our countries, and then what are the best solutions for children who don't speak the dominant language at home and so forth. So that's one aspect of globalization, which is accelerated, and definitely that's it's good to see school systems reacting in dual language education. For me, is a good reaction. It used to be different. It used to be bilingual education, whereby you enter in the system with your native language and you exit that system without your native language, but with English. That used to be bilingual education. This transition between one monolingualism to another, which created a lot of waste, a lot of wandering. But now the dual language movement is different. Really, it's putting both languages on the same level, and trying to nurture those languages throughout your schooling, and that is a good reaction to what's going on with the increase in newcomers into our school system. Not every country is doing it or doing it yet, and I see in my own country, in France, things are slowly getting there. More and more programs are being opened, but there are still issues with creating programs in certain languages and serving certain populations. And I'm sure the same could be said with Germany. It could be said with other countries as well, where there are there are still minds to change, or at least mindsets that could be changed or should be changed.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But those changes are, I would say, in terms of awareness, it's moving at lightning, speed compared to even 5 years ago or 10 years ago. I see a definite improvement. As you just mentioned, Japan. Japan is still a very, very homogenous population for all intents and purposes. But as you mentioned, there's lots of foreigners coming in now. There's a lack of human resources that then lots of other countries from Southeast Asia, they come in, also from the US and Europe. And people are getting more and more aware of the language barrier and how they want to raise the next generation at least speaking English. But as you probably saw when you went to Japan, it's not there yet, really. But I see lots of different efforts coming up. I know this lady. She started this thing where she had foreign families and Japanese families meet together periodically, and the internet really helped her cause. And now she's like running, there's hundreds of people in her community, and she's earning a living with that, and she's doing a fantastic job, enjoying the whole process and raising her kids to speak English within Japan. So that's these kind of efforts. It's really fun to see around the world.
Yeah, and talking about Japanese in Japan, I was very inspired when I saw 4 mothers approach me at some point, and they wanted to open the first Japanese dual language program in New York. And one of the 4 moms was Japanese herself. The other one was a Taiwanese. The third one was a Korean. The fourth one was Chinese. And I thought, well, look at this. You've got 4 moms, different backgrounds, different origins. They all want to work together to create a Japanese dual language program. And these were, maybe people whose ancestors were at war. but yet again, here they are together, working together to create a program in Brooklyn. And this was in Bushwick, Brooklyn. I don't know if you know Bushwick, Brooklyn. This is not Japanese. It's predominantly Puerto Rican. But then they were thinking that Spanish-speaking kids could also be part of the Japanese dual language program, and that's how this initiative was started. So you had kids who they were at school learning Japanese and Spanish at the same time, and then at home they spoke a third language. But all this to say that at some point, Japan's first lady came to visit. She went to Bushwick, Brooklyn, to visit the program in a public school, and she was so wowed by it that she decided to give a lot of money to the school just because of what it was saying. Similar language, it was really trying to again build bridges, trying to reconnect people, trying to foster mutual understanding and respect, and that a lot of these things could be exported to Japan.
Yeah, and not only Japan, right? Because you just mentioned it. It's not only for the Japanese or the families who speak Japanese at home or who want to, but also for other families who just say, okay, this is a possibility. This is an opportunity for us to have this at our doorsteps or their school steps, so to say. We don't have to travel to Japan for our children to learn Japanese, for example, right? You just send them to that school or see how much you can do. And I think maybe you can share the next question that goes a little bit in this direction, Tetsu.
Yeah.
Which is, what do you think about the relevance of multilingualism? Because we were starting with 2 languages and dual language, but now we are going towards more languages involved, right?
It's too ambitious.
Is it too ambitious? I don't know.
I don't think it is too ambitious. I see parents who they're doing it again. They're starting this by putting their kids in let's say in Japanese, and then it's English but they speak Spanish at home, or they speak another language at home. So they're already going for trilingualism. That's already in their mind, and many parents are investing in that already.
Yeah.
It's great if you can do it through public school education. That's even better. But
that's amazing.
I think it's not impossible. It's more a matter of time, really. The time you've got in your hands. There's only 24 hours a day, and learning languages take time, and it's you can definitely pick up 3, 4, and more languages. I know I'm talking to people I don't need to preach. Multilinguals in the room, but it's something that can be achieved. Definitely, as long as we start young and early, and that our school systems are open
Yes.
It doesn't have to be a struggle.
Yes.
That's what I'm always frustrated, is when it becomes a struggle.
Yeah, and you say it, if the school systems are open for this, and I know that many schools are maybe opener for this, or more open for this in primary school children, and then secondary school, they have another kind of program. But I really appreciate those schools who just continue this from the first day of school until the last, when the children leave the school. And I had the opportunity to do this. So I learned French from very early on. We didn't have French as one of our languages, and I grew up in Italy, so there was no need, if you want, but it's still a language that I use now every day, and I did a lot in this. So I know very well the benefits, and so I know it's possible, and I'm happy to see that it's even more possible in more and more places around the world. Thanks also to your revolution. And talking about revolution, I must confess, with some parents, when I talk about your book, and I told you that I talked also with French parents, and they say, yeah, il faut faire la révolution. Si on fait pas la révolution, il y a rien qui change. But there were others who say, revolution, that triggers something in me, depending, of course, what people have lived, right? So, but I'm not going to discuss your title. It's fine that it is like it is.
Yeah, I know revolution can mean something else depending on where you're from. I tried to in Japan, that it's not a term that was understood clearly. I don't know, Tetsu, you might contradict this, but I thought, well, yeah, maybe it's something that speaks to a Frenchman, but not so much to another person around.
I think in Japan, it's a positive connotation in general. There's no.
But it's what Ofelia Garcia said. She Professor Garcia wrote the preface to the book, and she said, "You call this a U-turn, because it's also a revolution is a U-turn, basically." But she added, in the U.S. context, it's a U-turn to what parents really wanted, particularly when they moved to the U.S. They didn't want to forget their language. They didn't want to hide their identity or hide their accent, and they wanted their kids to embrace all of this. So that's the revolution she's explained. You turn to that initial feeling, this initial desire from parents, is to raise the kids the way you want to raise the kids, and with that identity, that heritage, the bonds that you have with your grandparents. Also, that's another thing I tell my daughters. So you want to write your Christmas cards in French to your grandmas, because they'll appreciate that. They don't speak English, so you should do it in French. And then you talk to them on Zoom on Sundays, and you want to do this in French, and that bond that they've nurtured is essential. It will take them throughout their life, basically. So that's something we should definitely not waste. Intergenerational bonds.
Absolutely. So you mentioned grandma back in France, and you also talked about it a little bit earlier. I don't know. It's like to take some time, maybe highlight, specifically for the French community. What have you things that you'd like to feature.
Well, in the U.S., inevitably, I was engaged with the Francophone community or communities, because you have the historical Francophones in Louisiana and in Maine and New England. So you have these folks that have moved to the U.S. 100 years or more ago, and then you also even have Native American French speakers. Some tribes in
Quebecers.
Sure, but even before that, in Louisiana, you find tribes in the Humas, or another tribe that I follow, which is called the Pointe-aux-Chiens, and they're developing an French immersion school in the French that they speak, and I always find this fascinating. That this country as francophones, as citizens that are carrying a U.S. passport, but French is their mother tongue. So that's always been fascinating to me. And then later on, with the influx of immigrants from West Africa or the Caribbean, obviously you'll find a lot of French speakers everywhere, and I wanted to do something also for them. So there's a few programs that I've been involved with the Embassy of France, where I still work, and also a program called the French Heritage Language Program, whereby we try to bring classes or hours during their weekdays in the schools which have a lot of French speakers, French heritage speakers, and we try to tell them, don't give up, practice that language that is yours, and make it an asset, because this will bring you extra points when you do those SATs exams and then apply for college and things like that. This will give you opportunities for jobs. So we try to nurture, we try to encourage, particularly among these kids. A lot of them are teenage, trying to figure out their life in this country, trying to understand, is French relevant to them? But we just show them that it is, that it shouldn't be discarded. You should try to invest a little time in sustaining your French, and then it will take you places. It will take you around the world, and that's the kind of things that I try to convey. And Francophonie in the United States is fairly rich. My good friend Dr. Kathleen Steinsmith and I published a book together called French All Around Us, with about 20 authors from the U.S. And everyone wrote about what it means for them to speak French in this country, this gigantic country, where English is the dominant language. But what does it mean to be a Francophone in this country? And it's very, very touching to hear the stories, to hear the relationship that people have with that language. And I'm pretty sure it could be the same with German speakers in the U.S. or Japanese speakers in the U.S.
Well, I was going to say, where are we going to find a German Fabrice Jaumont and a German or Japanese Fabrice Jaumont? And you guys make a team, and you could cover the world with your passion.
Anyone who's interested in coming up with a book like this should reach out to me, because I worked with a small nonprofit called CALEC, the Center for the Advancement of Languages, Education, and Communities, and we try to publish books like this that are important for communities, or even for schools, or for just to sustain this linguistic diversity, and make sure that this is not wasted, that we're not squandering this wealth.
Okay. Well, you're kind of getting into our wrap-up question, I guess, for you. In your book, you talk about lots of these, bringing the parents together, building a community, and extracting the motivation and the power from that to create new schools. Sheer passion, when I read that book, I felt that kind of thing. So if anybody wants to do that, maybe you can explain a little bit about what it takes. How can one contribute to do something like the ones you explain in Bilingual Revolution? I mean, start by reading the book, obviously, but
yeah, well, you can download the roadmap. I think it's available on many websites, and it's first of all, it's this yes you can attitude that you need to understand that you can do it.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree. If you don't have that mindset,
you can do it. You're not alone. You're not alone, because many parents next to you, you don't even know. Maybe they're next door, and the moment you trigger, you start this little sparkle and say, "Okay, who wants to do this with me?" And then all of a sudden, you have a group, and that happened many times, where people just got together, put a plan together, figure out, what are the 10, 20 people we need to talk to, what are the obstacles we need to solve, and on and on, and then it's a step-by-step process. The roadmap helped, let's move faster, let's say, just try to avoid some of the mistakes and try to gain time, because a lot of times people doing this, they're doing this for themselves because they have young children, so they're doing this at a time when they don't have much time in their hands, but also they have it's against the clock, because you want to do this for, let's say, pre-K, kindergarten, so you need to allow yourself some time before you can convince the school, because it's not going to happen for next September if you start now. And we're in May, so obviously it's going to take some time. Yeah, but so that's the kind of people who get involved or are interested in your initiative. You can start an initiative even if you don't have children. A lot of teachers have done it. They have children, but maybe older children. But they said, okay, I'm going to get parents, trying to inform them as much as possible, try to get them to believe in this, that it is possible, that they can do it, and that they have powers. Because a lot of time parents don't understand or don't realize that they have power, and if you tell them that, then you're on to something. Then there is a revolution going.
Technology is on your side. It's we're more connected than ever before. It's so much easier to just create a Facebook group or LinkedIn group or whatever group. It's at the snap of a finger. You've got a group going, and communication is just so much easier today.
I've been on so many WhatsApp groups.
There you go. Now there's just so many. But so you can't say, you lack options to create that community.
No. And then every community will have its own set of obstacles and challenges. And I know I translated the book in 11 languages, and it's going to be different whether you're in France, in Germany, in Mexico, or in the UAE, because I actually was there. The book is in Arabic, and we talked about this topic in the Emirates, and it's going to be a different take. It's going to be different sets of challenges. It has to be, you're going to be trying to crack a code that is local to you, to your context. That's but if you got people engaged with that idea around you, then you'll find the solution.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oops, I made a mistake here. Let me
just correct again.
Yeah. I put the link to the book in the comment for those who wanted to check, but I connected the words together, so it might not work. But check out the link, and definitely check out the book. We are getting close to the top of the hour. What I would like to maybe ask Fabrice to do off the cuff here, some sort of a message to parents or to folks who want to drive in the next revolution. A message of power, of encouragement.
Well, it's first, don't give up your language.
Oh, yeah.
Keep that, cherish that. It's more than a language. It's a door to your identity, to your heritage, to your parents and grandparents. And I think it's important to give that to our children. That will help them build their identity, and I think we should cherish that and not think that English will do, or only English will do. And then the other message is, yes, you can. You can create that mini revolution in your community, in your school, in your town. Just the hardest is to get it started, but then you can do it. You can do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we're all here. If you guys have any questions, any concerns, if you want to reach Dr. Jaumont, Google Fabrice Jaumont, you're going to find all sorts of pages to find Dr. Jaumont. Okay, and his book is The Bilingual Revolution. And I am Tetsu Young, and you want to reach out to me for any advice, we're always open. Uta from the Europe side. We're all strongly passionate about the multilingualism, bilingualism, raising multilingual kids. So we will make the time for you if you have the need. So definitely don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you, Fabrice, for sharing your time and your expertise. Every time we do a session like this, we feel like we've gained a few IQ points. It's really enriching every time we were able to talk about this topic that we are so passionate about. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you to all the viewers on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We'll be back here again in June, as usual, the third Tuesday of the month. Have a good rest of the week. See you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye now.
Tot de volgende.